UFC Vegas 65. This fight card is filled with young fighters that are looking to solidify their names in the UFC. A lot of them are at the very early beginnings of their UFC careers, and these fights are crucial. Besides that, we got one of the most entertaining fighters to ever have done it, Derrick Lewis. He's coming off a big loss to Sergey. Now he gets an opportunity against another Sergey in the heavyweight division. It's a big fight for him. He's up in age. He's at a crossroads, in my opinion. You guys know it's going to be a fun one. Anytime Derrick Lewis steps in there, it's going to be a fun fight. All right, guys. So without further ado, let's jump right into today's show.
The teller.
It's another day. Left jab, right jab. This is MMA. Mixed martial arts, quick body parts, undefeated when I pick 'em. Who the champ, who the victim? Looking in my crystal ball, I predict the winner. Never stop fighting. If you lose, keep your chin up. Know how the game go. I'm a smart fella. Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
What is up, you guys? UFC Vegas 65. We have a showdown in the main event of two top 15 heavyweight fighters. In particularly, Derrick Lewis is throwing down one of the more fan-friendly fighters in the game. Holds all types of accolades when it comes to the knockout. He is can't miss TV. I don't really need to say too much about the Black Beast. You guys know what's up with the Black Beast. It's always a pleasure to watch him perform. Now, if you guys didn't know, I already have my recap of UFC 281 posted here on the channel. If you guys want to see how I did from a betting standpoint, if you want to hear me recap the entire card, do some matchmaking and all that, it is here on the channel. Other than that, if you guys could, please hit that like button. Go catch me on all my social media, on Instagram at MMA Fortune Teller _ and on Twitter at The MMA Teller. All right, guys. And, I'm not going to hold you guys up. We're going to jump right into the first fight as we scroll down. And you're going to see that the first fight is a flyweight matchup. This is actually a fight that I'm very intrigued about. Natália Silva taking on Tereza Bledá. Remember, Bledá, we just saw her fight on Dana White's Contender Series. She got the contract. She's only 20 years old, about to be 21, but still very young. She's a fighter that came into the show very hyped up. She was a big-time favorite. There was a lot of buzz about her. She comes in phenomenal shape. She's a big girl. And then you had Natália Silva, who made her UFC debut about 4 months ago, almost 5 months ago now, against Jasmine Jasudavicius. And Natália, in my opinion, she really went under the radar as she made her debut. There wasn't really too much buzz about her. People really wanted to see what she was about before she got any type of credit. And after she went out there and put on the performance that she put on, she got all types of credit. If you missed her fight, go run the tape back on it because she is very impressive. She's a very good striker. She's a well-rounded fighter. In her debut, she had a fighter in Jasmine who's also known for really pushing the pace with the grappling, trying to get her down, and Natália was able to stuff those takedowns, and she was able to get the job done there and won that fight convincingly. She's also very young, only 25 years old. Now, Bledá is going to have a 5-inch height advantage in this fight and a 6-inch reach advantage. And more importantly, again, Bledá is a girl that is very physically fit. She's very muscular. She's very strong. She's well-rounded, as I said. She can definitely make you pay if you're not up to par with the grappling. She'll take you down. She'll control you there. In her fight on Dana White's Contender Series, she was going for leg locks and knee bars, and I wasn't crazy about that because if you remember, her opponent actually was able to get top position in the first round, or she was able to get like a decent position based on the fact that Bledá was going for that submission. But Bledá was confident. She put herself in some vulnerable situations, but was able to reverse and get out of those situations. And at the very end of the fight, she looked good. She prevailed. She looked very strong late in that fight. She had some moments in the fight where she was really landing some good shots down in the mat on Maia. Her opponent was undefeated going into that fight. Maia, the Brazilian, was undefeated. That fight took place just slightly over a month ago. So Bledá was just in the cage. And I'm excited to see her perform again here. So how do I see this fight taking place? Before we get to the betting line, which you're going to know, Bledá is an underdog here. I think that Bledá is one of the more live dogs on the card. I really do. I think there's some variables in this fight where you really don't know how this is going to play out, because if Bledá is able to have success with her takedown, I think she could really score some points and control the fight down there. If she takes a very safe and cerebral game plan into this fight, I think that she could have some success. Now, that's not to say that there's not potential that Silva stuffs those takedowns regardless and makes her pay. But I could see Tereza being willing to exchange a little bit with Natália on the feet. I think Natalia's going to have success there. And overall, I'm going to say that Silva should be able to stuff some of those takedowns of Bledá, but that's the big question mark right there. If Silva continues to work on her takedown defense, coming off the performance she just had against Justin Davicius and continues to look good there, she definitely will get the better of the striking, in my opinion. I think she gets the better of the striking against Bledá. Blédá's powerful, but she's a little stiff with her striking. Silva is very fluid with her striking. Okay, you see her hitting the pads here, but it's more than that. Watch her UFC debut. She was very, very comfortable and fluid with her boxing. I think she gets the better of the striking there. And as much as I kind of wanted to start this card off with the dog pick in Tereza Bledá, a fighter that's very hyped up still, very young, you could see some growth in her game even just from that recent fight. You can see some major growth very rapidly. I still got to go with Natália Silva, who's very young, and you're going to see growth from her as well. And she's already done it in an official UFC fight. Although, take it with a grain of salt. Those Dana White's Contender Series fights are essentially UFC fights at this point. It's in the same facility and all that. But I am going to be taking Natália Silva here. She's a minus 175 favorite. I'm going to say there is more value on the plus 140 line of Tereza Bledá. I have to say that. At plus 140, I got to lean more value towards that way. But that being said, if Natália Silva has good success with stuff in that takedown, expect her to be a lot quicker, more fluid, and landing the crisper shots in there and getting the job done in the first fight of the card. Fernie Garcia taking on Brady Hiestand. It's great to see Brady making his way back into the octagon. Brady had a lot of success on the Ultimate Fighter show. He's very young. He's coming off a long layoff here, but at the age of 23, I think it's good for him. We'll see him develop and grow in front of our eyes. I'm excited to see how he looks in this fight. Now, his opponent, Fernie Garcia, had a big-time knockout victory on Dana White's Contender Series and then dropped his UFC debut against Journey Newsom. That's not really a fighter that you want to lose to. So there are some question marks surrounding Fernie, but we do know he has some good power on the feet. When you're talking about Brady Hiestand coming off this long layoff and he's looking to sign the dotted line to make his way back in the cage, you have to understand that's going to be very intimidating when he sees the name Fernie Garcia. Before he even pulls up the resume on Fernie, Fernie has one of the more intimidating names. You just know he's going to be a gamer. Anyone that walks into the cage with the name Fernie, just the rhythm and the tone of that name, Fernie. So, that's what Brady's kind of facing right now. And then you start to look what Fernie's about. Like I mentioned, Fernie has some big power on the feet. He had a big-time knockout over Joshua Weems. We just saw Joshua Weems make his UFC debut, and he started off decent with the wrestling, but eventually was finished by the young C-Rod, who's a talented fighter. So, that Weems fight, although we know Weems is tough, he is a little bit technically unsound, and Fernie did make him pay there. But then in his UFC debut, the loss to Journey Newsom, that was a fight where Journey chewed up his legs. Fernie just didn't look to be at his best that day, I would say. If you break down the tape on that fight, I think that he's had some better performances. I don't know, maybe I'm underestimating Journey, but like I said, I'm not really too sold on Journey Newsom, so that's a major question mark in my opinion. Fernie has battled over in LFA for some time. He's had some big victories over there, and he's coming into this fight with more experience than Brady, but Brady has been involved in MMA from a very young age, and he has some legit grappling skills. He can really push the pace with the grappling. In fact, that's really what he looks to do. He looks to close the distance, get in on his opponent's hips, get them down to the mat where he tries to work the jiu-jitsu, the ground and pound and all that. And he's quite good at that. But when he faces an opponent that can stuff the takedown and keep the fight standing. At times, he has ran into some trouble there. He was knocked out by Chad Enhelinger. We know Chad; he's a UFC fighter as well. Tough customer. Chad was obviously the much older man going into that fight. He had much more experience than Brady, so understand that as well. That fight was 3 years ago. Chad, he's up there in age, so you could understand that Brady was only 20 years old. Brady is going to be a much better version from the fighter he was then. Another thing too, you see that he's lost 2 of his last 3 fights, but do understand this isn't taking into consideration the wins that he had on the Ultimate Fighter show. Had success on the Ultimate Fighter show. I believe he beat Vince Murdoch, and he beat another fighter as well. So he'll be an inch taller, and he will have a 4-inch reach advantage. But Brady will need to sharpen up his striking. I do like the 4-inch reach advantage that he has. If he can kind of jab and hit some shots from the outside before he tries to set up his takedowns, I think that will be good for him. Fernie, in my opinion, is going to have to stuff the takedown. He's going to have to use proper footwork to keep circling off the cage, keep this fight at range, and try to land some big shots and potentially get that knockout. I think he needs the knockout here. Maybe he doesn't need the knockout. I shouldn't say that, because if he's able to stuff the takedowns at will, he'll just have success and he'll probably outpoint Brady on the feet. I think there's definitely potential for that. But remember now, this is the smaller cage we're talking about at the Apex Center, and Brady will be coming nonstop. So I think Fernie's going to have his plate full here. But at the same time, do understand there's a realistic recipe for Fernie to have some success in this fight. So we'll have to see which man implements their game plan more so. So we'll take a look at the betting line here. Let's see what we're working with for this fight. Let's see if Bovada has this line up. And Fernie Garcia is a plus 135 underdog, while Brady Hiestand is a minus 165. And let's see how this line has moved. Brady Hiestand, slight action coming in on him. Not much. Very, very slight action coming in on him. Nothing really to talk about there, but just the action is moving his way. So you keep an eye on that. But yes, I am going to be taking Brady Hiestand to get the job done. I think we'll see his striking develop a little bit, and I think he'll be able to hang with Fernie there. But overall, he'll be the stronger, more physically fit fighter, pushing Fernie against the cage. And I think he does solidify a couple takedowns in this fight. And then also the X factor is, if he gets Fernie down to the mat, maybe he really has some real success down there and really controls him. Maybe tries to set up a sub or really drop some heavy leather there. Give me Brady Hiestand. I think we'll see the best version of him that we've seen thus far. Maria Oliveira taking on Vanessa Demopoulos. Vanessa Demopoulos on a 2-fight winning streak. Now, the Jin Yufrey fight, that was a little bit questionable. Some people thought she should have lost that fight. It was a close one. Props to Vanessa for digging deep and making that fight play out closely. Before that, she had the armbar submission over my girl, Silvana Gomez Juarez. Don't get me started on her. That was a fight where Juarez dropped Demopoulos very badly, and Demopoulos kept her composure, went right to the jiu-jitsu, and pulled off that armbar. Now, we know Vanessa Demopoulos is a girl that is very, very flexible. I mean, she's about as flexible of a fighter that you'll ever see. I mean, she could pull the legs all the way over the head and all that. I mean, if you're sitting in her guard, I mean, she's constantly going to be attacking with subs. And she's very tough, too. She's a very tough cookie. She can throw down on the feet. She's not the most technically sound there. Her defense is lacking. We've seen her get really bloodied up over an LFA back in the day against Lupi Godinez. But Vanessa's tough. You got to give her credit for being tough. Now, her opponent, Maria Oliveira, look at her over here. Oliveira has been decently impressing me as of recently. And the main reason why is because, besides all this, is that the fact that she's very aggressive and very active on the feet. She's very active with her striking, and I do like that. I expect her to be the better striker in this matchup. As I said, Demopoulos is tough, and she'll throw some shots back at Oliveira. But Oliveira, you saw her in the Gloria DePaula fight. She was really throwing some volume in the feet, throwing 3, 4, 5 punch combinations, these straights kind of bombarding DePaula there. I think DePaula is a good fighter, too. You take a look at some of the losses that Oliveira's had. Tabitha Ritchie has really shown to be a good fighter. The second most previous loss was on the Contender Series against Maryna Rodriguez. We know how nasty of a striker she is. And then other than that, she's been doing her thing. So she's only 25 years old too, so expect to see growth. While on the other hand, Vanessa Demopoulos, although she only has 12 pro fights, she's 34 years old. She's getting up there in age. Oliveira brings in a 7-inch reach advantage. She's 4 inches taller. She's more lengthy. I'm going to have to side with Oliveira here. Now, the The thing with Demopoulos is that, like I said, she's very tough and she could pull off a sub down on the mat. So if Oliveira gets dragged down to the mat in one way or another, say she drops her, follows her down there, or somehow this fight goes to the mat, Demopoulos is alive for a sub. She always is. She has good jiu-jitsu. She really does. So we take a look at the betting line. Almost pick 'em odds here. Maria Oliveira -121 with the comeback on Demopoulos at -103. I am going to go with Maria Oliveira, and this line is so close, so it's really pick your poison there. So yeah, I feel there's more value on the Maria Oliveira line, obviously, because there's just not much of a difference in this line, and I think that I'll take the striking over Oliveira compared to the submission and jiu-jitsu skills of Vanessa Demopoulos. Vanessa doesn't have the best offensive wrestling to get the fight down to the mat, so that's another thing that's kind of going against her too. But Vanessa Demopoulos representing Greece, I do like that. Hopefully she comes out with the Greek flag and the Greek fight shorts and all that. I mean, I'm Greek, so maybe I'll be supporting my girl, or maybe I'll have money on Oliveira and I'll be fading Demopoulos, and I won't give a crap about none of that stuff. Let's see how it goes. Ricky Turcios taking on Kevin Natividad. We talked about Ricky Turcios a little bit ago. Of course, he did defeat Brady Hiestand to win the Ultimate Fighter. That was a fun fight. Ricky Turcios is a fun fighter to watch. Now, I was a little disappointed in his last fight that he had against Aman Zahabi. Thought that was a fight that he should have went out there and took. And if he would have won that fight, the hype on him would have been really going right now. But he did have a little bit of a setback there, and he's going to look to put the train back in the tracks here. Ricky Turcios, 29 years old. He's not extremely young. He's getting a little bit of a later start to his UFC career, but that's okay because he has a good amount of experience. He's fought on Dana White's Contender Series back in the day when he was younger. He has a lot of martial arts experience, and he's an extremely active fighter. Okay, this is a fighter that's a real scrapper. All right, this isn't a guy that's going to just lay down. I mean, he's going to be really going at his opponent, even if he's down and out. He's going to be scratching and clawing to get the W, and that's something that you got to like. Kind of has like this karate type striking, I would say. Not exactly, but he's light in his feet. He kind of throws wild kicks, and he's just kind of light in his feet. Kind of has that traditional martial arts background, but he mixes it good with the modern day MMA style as well. Doesn't have any big knockouts as of recently, which is an X factor in this fight because Kevin Natividad is coming off 2 knockout losses. But the thing I like about Turcios is that he's very active, and he does throw. He'll throw the kitchen sink at his opponent, so there's a realistic opportunity for him to clip Kevin and get another knockout, or for Kevin to be knocked out once again. I think that is a realistic possibility, even though Turcios isn't a fighter that puts real power into his shots. He just has to touch Natividad right now. Kevin hasn't fought in a year and a half, which is good for him after getting knocked out back to back so quickly. Coming off those fights back to back right there. I think he needed that layoff. Ricky Turcios will be 3 inches taller, have a 2-inch reach advantage. He's a good grappler as well. He's very active off his back. He's good with the jiu-jitsu. I got to side with my boy Ricky here. Kevin, even though he's coming off those 2 knockout losses, just to give you an idea what he's about, Kevin has some heavy hands. He's a solid boxer. He's willing to sit in the pocket and really sling some heavy leather. So do understand that he has the realistic possibility to clip Ricky as well. But I overall, I just think that Ricky is the more polished fighter. He's the more active fighter. When he's in there, he'll be more active. He'll be mixing things up, and I got to side with Ricky here. So let's take a look at the betting line here. Ricky Turcios, a -155 favorite over Kevin Natividad at +130. So people still respecting Kevin, even coming off those 2 losses. People understand that when things are going good for him, he does have some things that he brings to the table. Like I said, good boxing, heavy hands, and he'll have more of a, I don't know if you want to say a more technically sound approach. As I said, Ricky's a little bit more unorthodox and wild. Kevin kind of sits down on his punches and throws those heavy boxing shots. Maybe he clips Ricky with a shot. And then also, I guess people are not too impressed with the performance that Ricky just put on against Aman Zahabi. But Zahabi, a very cerebral fighter, high IQ, of course, with his brother training him and all that. But give me Ricky Turcios here, and I'll say there's more value even in that -155 line. Kevin's coming off 2 brutal knockouts, and he needs to show me something. Miles Johns taking on Vince Morales. Miles Johns coming off a little bit of a layoff here, 9 months, and a fight that he really broke down against John Castaneda. He was in a 2-fight winning streak going into that fight. Miles Johns came off Dana White's Contender Series a while back. We know Miles Johns. I think he was like a nurse or something. He was in the medical field at one point in time. A real tough kid. Has the wrestling background. He's been working on his boxing. And, he's been training over in Texas at Fortis MMA for some time. And he's a fighter, in my opinion, he's a fighter that I don't know if I want to say he's underrated, but he's a decent fighter. Vince Morales, on the other hand, Vince Morales is a fighter that I used to be very harsh about when I would talk about him. I thought that he was a fighter that was definitely not a UFC caliber fighter. He had some very questionable performances. But the thing you got to like about Vince is he went back to the drawing board and definitely corrected some things and has came back a sharper fighter and has had some good performances as of recently. And especially with his boxing. His boxing is good. He has some good hands. You saw him defeat Draco Rodriguez, and then he went out there and knocked out Luis Smoka. Those were two big performances for him. All that before dropping a fight to Jonathan Martinez. We know Jonathan Martinez is a talented kid. So, how do I see this fight playing out? Both men, 5'7" with the 68-inch reach. Vince training at a Syndicate MMA, Syndicate versus Fortis MMA. I like that matchup there. These guys have a lot of things similar about themselves. John's 14 pro fights compared to the 17 pro fights of Morales there. I think Morales has some boxing experience as well. On the feet, Miles Johns has some good power in his hands. He's a good boxer, but the success that Vince has been having there, I wouldn't be surprised if Vince has some success there. The thing about Miles Johns is that he does mix things up well, though. I like the way that he'll throw a couple of shots and then he'll change levels, go for the takedown. Kind of reminds me of vintage Rampage. Not Rampage Jackson. Definitely not Rampage, but Rashad Evans. Vintage Rashad Evans he would set up his takedowns with his boxing. Miles Johns can do that when he's doing his thing. That's something that he does well. And based on the fact that when his wrestling is working good, he can definitely control his opponents down on the mat. I got to side with Miles Johns here. I'll take Miles Johns. I know that Vince Morales has had a little bit of success as of recently, but I think Johns could hang with him on the feet. And then again, especially he needs to mix things up. I don't want to see Johns just boxing it out with Morales because he could run into some trouble there. But pressuring Morales up against the cage, maybe trying to mix in some takedowns and clinch up against the cage and whatnot, I could see him getting the better of Morales there. So that's why I'm going to side with Miles Johns. Let's go see what the betting line on this fight is. Miles Johns is, let's see if Bovada might not have this line up. I know they were missing a line or two here, but we will just pull up MMA odds. So right now, Miles Johns is a minus 145 favorite over on DraftKings. He's a minus 145 favorite, pretty much across the board there, with the comeback at plus 125 for Vince Morales. I'm going to say that I still see a little bit more value in the minus 145 line on Miles Johns, even though I think that Vince has his avenue to try to keep this fight close or try to make a big statement, maybe gets a knockout on the feet or something like that. At the plus 125 line, I'm not really crazy about that line there. And I also do want to point out that Mario Batista, who's surging as a fighter, did have that knockout victory over Miles Johns. It was a big victory where he clipped Miles with that flying knee and all that. But so we have seen Miles Johns put out before. I don't know if Vince Morales is the guy to put him out once again. We'll see about that. Give me Miles Johns to win this fight, changing levels and just being overall a little bit better. The former title challenger, Jennifer Maia, who's only won one of her last 4 fights, taking on Maryna Moroz, who's on a 3-fight winning streak, coming off a big victory over Maria Agapova. There was some bad blood in that fight. Of course, a lot going on with Moroz and where she's from and all that at the time as well. That was a big fight for her. Before that, defeated Mayra Bueno Silva and Sabina Mazo. Jennifer Maia, like I said, only won one of her last 4 fights. That was over Jessica Ai. The losses that she's taken against some decent opponents here, Manon Farot, Caitlin Chikogian, and Valentina Shevchenko. So, I mean, that's some good competition to lose to if you're going to lose, right? Jennifer Maia, we know that she's a well-rounded fighter. She's always been known as a fighter that can really grapple and do have success down in the mat, but she's been working on her boxing game too. She's aggressive there. I think she's a little bit underrated. She's 34 years old, so she's getting up there in age, but she's a girl that seems very dedicated and very professional. So that's something that she has going for herself as well. I don't think that she's a fighter that's just going to fall off a cliff. I think that she'll hang around based on how professional she keeps it. So Maryna Moroz will have a 3-inch reach advantage. She's 3 inches taller, so we know she's more rangy. Maryna Moroz is a well-rounded fighter. She has some jiu-jitsu skills as well. She could strike, she can grapple, she could do a little bit of everything. She's coming into this fight as the favorite. She has a lot of momentum behind her right now, and I'm going to be taking Jennifer Maia here. I'm going to say that Jennifer Maia hangs with Maryna Moroz in the feet. They slug it out a little bit. Maia is a bulldog. She's tough. I think she'll pressure forward, and Maia's very strong as well. She has very good jiu-jitsu. And I could see maybe if this fight goes down to the mat that Maia gets on top, has some control time, and just digs deep and takes this fight. So, remember, Jennifer Maia had a very good start against Valentina Shevchenko early in that fight. And, she's had some big moments. I mean, the armbar submission over Joanne Calderwood, now Joanne Wood. She's had some good fights throughout her career. And I'll take her in a dog spot here. So, yeah, I do believe there's going to be more value on her, obviously, as she is the underdog. Jennifer Maia, a plus 146 with the comeback of Maryna Moroz at minus 175. I think there's more value on a plus 146 line of Jennifer Maia. She has a lot of experience, and as long as she's coming into this fight in shape, ready to go, I don't see any reason why she can't pull it off. And if Maryna Moroz is going to have success, just to talk about what she'll be looking to do, I think with that reach advantage, we talked about that length advantage, I think she will look to pump the jab and kind of work from the outside a little bit. And just a big narrative of this fight is that Jennifer Maia will have to use proper footwork to cut this cage off. Remember, it's a smaller cage, and she will have to have good distance management, close the distance, and make it an ugly fight. And slip in the inside, land some heavy hooks, some heavy shots. Will Moroz, in my opinion, will have to use that footwork to kind of strike from the outside and look to mix things up with her jiu-jitsu and whatnot as well. She's a well-rounded fighter. And look at her here. Definitely worth a look. Maryna Moroz trying to get some attention over on Instagram. Looks like she thinks she's a Playboy model. I'm pretty sure. Let's see here. Happy to announce that I'll be the first UFC fighter on a Playboy centerfold. Can't wait to partner up with such an iconic brand. So check that out. She's going to be on the centerfold of the Playboy magazine. I didn't even know they still do those things, huh? I mean, obviously I did know that they still do that. But are any of you guys actually buying Playboy magazines these days? I'm pretty sure you guys are doing a little something different than buying Playboy magazines. Remember the Playboy magazines when we were kids, man? Finding somebody that had it, whether it was an uncle, dad, older brother, get a little magazine, have it under the bed. Some good times, right? The times have changed a lot, though. We have access to some more wild stuff these days, but nothing like when you were a young buck and had the old sticky Playboy magazine where all the pages were stuck together and you're ripping them apart and they were getting shredded up and whatnot. You guys know what I'm talking about. The ink was ripping apart and all that. You guys know what I'm talking about. Stop acting like you don't. Zhalgas Zhumagulov taking on Charles Johnson. Zhalgas has only won one of his last 5 fights. Now, he had that impressive victory over Jerome Rivera, but remember now, Jerome Rivera was not a UFC caliber opponent, even though Zhalgas made quick work of him in the first round. Zhalgas, he has some decent power in his hands. He's a tough guy. He's well-rounded. I love the work that he's been putting in over at American Top Team. I think that he's definitely trying to be the best version of himself. But the best version of himself, I don't know if it's good enough to beat a guy in Charles Johnson, who is a little bit younger of a fighter, but he's coming in with a 5-inch height advantage, a 4-inch reach advantage, a little bit more of a pure athlete here, and a fighter that's very hungry to get his first victory inside the UFC. Now, he made his UFC debut against Muhammad Mokaev, obviously a fighter that a lot of people are high on, one of the top prospects to come into the UFC. And none of that energy really phased Charles Johnson, in my opinion. I think he was game in that fight. He was a little bit outmatched with the grappling, but he was tough and he was ready to throw down. And unfortunately, he couldn't really keep Mokaev off of him. To an extent, he kind of did at points, but overall, obviously, he didn't do it enough to get the job done, and he was controlled there a little bit. But I think he comes into this fight hungry. I'm not really sure if Zhalgas would be able to control him and hold him down for 15 minutes. I think we're going to see Energy really let his striking go a little bit. He's going to be able to show what he's about a lot more so in this fight, so I'm excited to see that. He's had some big victories outside the UFC. He's had some very entertaining fights. He's showcased his skills outside the UFC, fighting over in LFA. Coming into the UFC, he had a knockout over Carlos Mota, a knockout over João Camilo, a split decision victory over Haruchi, and an anaconda choke over Carly Pangilinan. So he's been putting in work over in LFA for some time. I'm going to be siding with Charles Johnson here. Zhalgas, 34 years old. I think this is a tough fight for him. I think that Charles is the more hungry fighter right now, which maybe I shouldn't say that like that because I know Zhalgas, he's a very diligent fighter, and I'm sure he's extremely hungry to get a victory based on the fact that he's only won one of his last 5 fights. But Charles Johnson, just a little bit younger. He's never had that victory in the octagon yet. He needs that victory. And I think that Charles Johnson's going to be digging deep to get that victory. And he'll be a little bit more athletic and a little bit more diverse with his abilities. Give me Charles Johnson here. Charles Johnson is a minus 165 favorite over Zhalgas, who's a plus 131. I mean, I think that line's decently accurate. I feel that there's not really... I wouldn't say confidently one way or another that there's value in the plus 131 line or in the 165 line. It's kind of on the money. And this fight, yeah, I mean, I'm not crazy at Zhalgas at plus 131 dog odds. I'm not really crazy about Charles Johnson at minus 165. I do want to see him. You know what? Let's say there's more value in the minus 165 line. Let's go that route. Charles has shown some things over in LFA. I think that he's going to be able to do some of those things here against Zhalgas. We'll edge more value in the minus 165 line. I'm not going to do you guys like that and not give you a clear answer there. More value in the minus 165 line, Charles. Jack Della Maddalena taking on Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts. Danny Roberts, a fighter that's really been involved in some fan-friendly fights over the years. A striker that's willing to brawl it out. Tricky southpaw type fighter. Does have a slight giraffe syndrome type of thing going on, if you guys know what I'm talking about. Sometimes when he's involved in these brawls, he'll be a little wobbly in there. He kind of slows down. He kind of has those baby deer legs under him at times. If you guys know what I'm talking about, if you've seen him in some of those wars, he gets a little wobbly and slow, and we've seen his opponents capitalize against him when he's a little bit offbeat. He's been cracked with some shots before. Got knocked out by Michel Pereira. Was submitted by Claudio Silva. He had the knockout victory over Zalim Amadayov. That guy, if you remember Zalim Amadayov, that guy was undefeated coming in the UFC against a bunch of padded guys with padded records, and then really proved not to be a UFC caliber fighter. Had a split decision victory over Ramazan Ameev. Jack Della Maddalena, since Dana White's Contender Series, that this guy has shown that he's a very polished striker. We saw in his last fight, once again, landed some big shots. Now, it was against a fighter that didn't have a lot of pro experience, but do understand that his opponent, Pete Rodriguez, he had another fight since then, but the fight against Pete Rodriguez where he had the finish there, Pete Rodriguez had a lot of amateur experience. And then in Jack's last fight, he had the knockout, of course, against Ramazan Ameev, a common opponent of both guys. Jack Maddalena, very, very technically sound. He's a southpaw as well. So southpaw versus southpaw. It should be a fun fight on the feet. And I got excited with Jack Della Maddalena getting the job done. And via finish as well. I think he gets a knockout here. I think they engage in a fan-friendly fight once again. And Danny Roberts, now 35 years old. He's been through the ringer. 24 pro fights. A lot of tough and hard sparring under his belt. And Jack Maddalena, just with the 14 pro fights, I think, at 26 years old, I think he'll be way more fresh here, and he will be the fighter that lands that sharper, crisper shot and gets the finish. So I am going to be going with Jack Della Maddalena, but understand that Danny Roberts he's a tricky fighter as well. He'll get that left leg up there for the head kick, and if at any point in time in this fight Jack Della Maddalena is slipping on the feet, a guy like Roberts does have potential to shut your lights out. I mean, we've seen him go out there and knock guys out, so he's a tough customer as well. But I think that he will just be a little bit slower and a little bit more offbeat than the more sharp and crisp Jack Della Maddalena. This line is pretty ridiculous here. Let's pull up the betting line on this. Jack Della Maddalena is a minus 500. He's a 5-1 favorite with the comeback on Danny Roberts at plus 350. Where do I go with this? I mean, what am I going to say? There's value in a minus 500 line in Jack Della Maddalena? I don't know. You're going to be looking for that under or for that knockout prop, or you're going to mix him in a parlay and feel really confident about it. But at the same time, I told you guys, Danny Roberts is just not necessarily a slouch in the feet. He'll be throwing some heavy limbs towards Jack's head as well. Maybe there's more value on that plus 350 line, but let me be clear. I think Jack gets the job done. Cody Brundage taking on Rodolfo Vieira. Rodolfo Vieira, the black belt hunter. We know him as one of the more decorated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu players to ever come into mixed martial arts or work their way into the UFC. He's had some ups and downs without a doubt, but he definitely is becoming a better mixed martial artist by the day. I think we could definitely say that. Cody Brundage coming off of his biggest victory as a pro, where he knocked out Tresean Gore, and then we saw once again Tresean Gore is a talented fighter. He rebounded with the big victory, so that win looks good for Cody. Before that, had the victory over Dalcha Lengambula, submitted him there. And then he had that loss to Nick Maximov. That one doesn't look the best, especially how Nick has looked recently. You would have hoped that Cody would have took that fight. Lost in a grueling grappling type affair. The fight that really stands out to me here, though, is the fact that if you remember Cody Brundage's fight on Dana White's Contender Series, where he was finished by William Knight, that was a fight that's not a good look for him. He had William Knight down, but was down in the mat early, and then let William Knight work his way back up. And eventually, I think he took Cody's back, and he started, he elbowed him, whatever, he TKO'd him there, and that just was not a good look as far as the grappling of Cody. We know Cody has the American wrestling abilities. I believe he wrestled at a Division I school and all that, but I have a tough time seeing him have really any success in the grappling department against a guy like Vieira. Vieira is nasty there. Cody's going to have to use that wrestling to keep his fight on the feet and try to tee off on Vieira from the outside. Now, Chris Curtis was able to do that in his last fight. That was an official play of mine, a major official play. I believe it was like a 6-unit play I had a while back, 3 months ago. We cashed that very nicely. I'm not really sure if Cody's going to have the ability to pull off what Curtis did in that fight. Curtis had to dig deep in that fight, stuff those takedowns, and use the very skilled striking that Curtis has. I'm not really sure that Brundage's striking is really super refined. Again, I know he had that knockout victory where he hit Tresean Gore. Tresean Gore had a very bad weight cut. He hit him with the big shot. Yeah, okay, maybe he has the ability to land a big shot, but overall, I don't necessarily see him just styling on Vieira. Vieira's striking has gotten better, and I think it'll look even better here. It's been getting better fight to fight. He's very aggressive, but the threat of the takedown and the grappling that he brings to the table also kind of allows him to land some strikes there as well. But I'm hoping this fight hits the mat and we get to see some of the grappling skills of Vieira against the wrestler in Brundage. And I'm going to be siding with Vieira. Again, I like the fact that Vieira has really looked better every time that he stepped in there. And coming off the loss, it was a fight that went to a decision. It was a 3-round war. I'm trying to remember. I believe that fight also may have taken place. Let me just check this real quick, guys. I think that fight actually took place. Did it take place in Denver, Colorado? No, excuse me. It took place in Las Vegas. Never mind. But anyways, it was a 15-minute war. Great experience for Vieira. I think Vieira comes in looking better than ever. And I'm going to give him this fight. I think maybe he pulls the sub off or uses his grappling to get the job done. Let's see the line on this. All right, so let's see what we got here. Rodolfo Vieira, a -185 favorite over Cody Brundage at +150. Oh, man. It's an accurate line. I like the line there. Yeah, that's a line. I wanted to do it to you guys again. I'm just saying it's an accurate line. It's hard to say which way I'm going to go. Kind of want to side with Vieira there, but I would like to see Vieira maybe more towards like a 170, 165. Maybe that's a little high. So check what sportsbook, what line you can get on maybe a different sportsbook. Brundage at +150. Maybe there's more value there based on the fact that he could have some success on the feet. Might be able to stuff the takedowns with this wrestling. I don't know. That's a tough one. Maybe there's more value at the +150 line of Brundage there. I think that line is pretty spot on, right around that range. Muslim Salikhov taking on Andre Fialho. Now, Andre Fialho coming off a very, very tough loss where he was finished by Jake Matthews, the surging Jake Matthews. Without a doubt, that was the best version we've ever seen from him. That was a fight where he was just way, way quicker to the punch, and was just way more on his P's and Q's that day. Andre Fialho, very technical, but he was a little bit too comfortable and trusting his distance a little bit too much, and he was a little off there. Matthews was able to connect on him. Before that, we saw the knockout of Andre Fialho had the knockout over Cameron Van Camp, a lower level fighter. He had the victory over Miguel Baeza. Miguel Baeza is a talented fighter, but Miguel Baeza has been getting put out by a lot of guys as well. He's been struggling a little bit there. And then he had a loss to Michel Pereira. Before that was a fun fight. A victory over Stefan Sekulic before making his way into the UFC. The thing I like about Fialho is that he's been very active since entering the UFC. Now, his last fight was 5 months ago, and he definitely took some major damage. So I don't know if I'm so happy about him being so active right now. I mean, maybe he wanted to take a little bit more time off there, but that's not the case here. And he's going to need to be on his P's and Q's because Muslim Salikhov is a fighter that has some danger striking and can land a big shot and knock you out. We've seen him go in there and starch guys before. Remember what he did to Nordin Taleb, landed some big shots on him. He's dangerous on the feet. He's hungry. He's coming off a loss himself. Just tasted defeat against the Leech Jingling Li. And that was 3 months ago. We know the Leech is a talented striker. Before that, though, Muslim Salikhov was doing his thing, defeating a lot of guys, respectable guys. We talked about Nordin Taleb back in the day, Staropoli, Zaleski dos Santos, and then Francisco Trinaldo. So I think that this fight should take place on the feet. I expect both these guys to be willing to engage there, and whoever lands that big shot could really shake this fight up. I hope that Andre is a little bit more sharp with his distance management and his defense, because sometimes he gets a little bit too confident in his offense and puts himself at risk. And a guy like Salikhov will counterpunch you, counter shot you, and put you out. So I think there's a realistic possibility that Salikhov lands that knockout blow in this fight. I think there's definitely a realistic possibility. But you know what? Give me Andre Fialho here. I think he sharpens a couple things up. He's the younger fighter, 28 years old. He's going to have about a 4.5 inch reach advantage. He's taller. He has that range advantage. I would like to see him use his footwork good here, stay on the outside. And he's a nasty striker himself. And give me Fialho. I think he bounces back with the victory. So Fialho, this is a pick'em fight here. I do believe that Muslim Salikhov opened as a slight favorite on some books, but it's a dead pick'em right now in Bovada. And it's a close fight, but obviously I will say the value is more so on Fialho based on the fact I'm picking him, but there's a realistic possibility that he gets knocked out. Also take a look at the under, or maybe you take a look at Muslim Salikhov via knockout if you can get a fat, juicy line on that. But give me Fialho overall, and Fialho is always live for his own knockout because he's a dangerous offensive striker as well. So, but give me Andre Fialho. Chase, the Sherman, taking on Waldo Cortes-Acosta. Waldo was just in there a week and 2 days ago. It will be about 2 weeks by the time he steps into the cage for this fight. So he was just in there. Didn't have his best performance. It wasn't an official play of mine. It did cash. He took out Jared Vandeira, and I thought that he could have performed a little bit better, but won a unanimous decision, 130-27 on some of the judges' scorecards. Chase Sherman, on the other hand, was supposed to just recently be stepping in there against Josh Parisian. Jared Vandeira, Josh Parisian, a lot of people do believe they're the same guy. They just changed their names up for whatever reason. I don't know why they don't just stick being the same guy so they can just have more pro fights on their resume. For whatever reason, Vandeira and Parisian still pretend to be separate people. Not sure exactly why. I guess I do see why. Parisian was trying to get the rematch after losing to Sherman after getting knocked out in the third round. So he tried to pretend that he was Josh Parisian so he can get that rematch against Sherman. So maybe I'm on to what he's doing. But you guys catch what I'm talking about there, because they are essentially the same guy. But Chase Sherman had that fight fall through after coming off the victory over Vandeira. And before that, Sherman was just getting defeated by everybody. Porker Porter almost disrespected him and called him Parker Porter. Let me not forget his real name, Porker Porter. Jake Collier, Alexander Romanov. That one, at least Romanov is a big-time fighter. But before that, losing to Jake Collier, Parker Porter, Andrei Arlovsky up there in age. Sherman, okay, he had a good performance in his last fight, but I'm not that high in Sherman. We know he had some experience throwing down on the BKFC scene, the bare knuckle scene, whatever. Waldo Cortes-Acosta has the boxing background. This should be a fight where we're both meant to slug it out on the feet. I think Waldo Cortes-Acosta will be the more polished boxer here. Again, even though he wasn't that impressive in his most recent fight, I still got to side with him here. Both men 6'4", 78-inch reach. I think Cortes lands the more crisp shots and will either outpoint Sherman or maybe even get a finish. Maybe he lands a big shot. These are two heavyweights throwing down. And Sherman, I don't know. I just can't pick Sherman there. Let's see what the betting line on this fight is. Waldo Cortes-Acosta, a -190 favorite, almost a 2-1 favorite over Sherman. Give me more value on the -190 line than Sherman at a +155. I know it's heavy. It's a heavyweight match. Anything can really happen with these guys. Waldo hasn't really proven himself all the way, but Sherman, it's hard to say there's value on Sherman at a +155 line in the heavyweight division in the UFC. Ian Cutelaba taking on Kennedy and Shekou. Ian Cutelaba, unfortunately for him, he just really hasn't proven to be the fighter that a lot of people thought that he could have been. We know he has the grappling and wrestling background. We know he has big power on the feet. We know he brings in a crazy tenacity when he goes to war and goes in there to fight. Victory over Devin Clark as of recently. Split decision, a draw. It was a split decision draw to Dustin Jacoby. That was a fight where he had the 10-8 in the first round and then dropped the latter of the 2 rounds. Other than that, I mean, as of recently, finished by Johnny Walker in that recent fight, finished by Ryan Spann, knocked out by Magomed Ankalaev, essentially lost twice right to Magomed Ankalaev there. At least he's battling against decent talent there when he's losing, but he just seems to be flaking out in there, in my opinion. I don't know. Something seems a little off with him. I feel like he could face some more adversity in this fight against Kennedy. Kennedy, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. Kennedy Nzechukwu is a type of fighter I realistically feel that a lot of you guys listen to this kid can go grab your Louisville Slugger and give him a whack right against the side of his skull, and I think he'll keep walking forward and just keep throwing those long pogo sticks of limbs right against you and put you out. And this guy has a granite chin. We've seen him take a lot of damage and continue to go forward. He has the heart of a lion. The performance against Carlos Ulberg was very impressive. The range that he has gives a lot of fighters problems too. And but most importantly, the thing that stands out to me is his heart and his will. And on the other hand, Cutelaba just seems to be flaking out. Like I said, I know he's a tough guy. I don't want to say he's not tough, but seems to just kind of fade and just kind of withers in there at times. I know he's extremely hungry to get a W here, and he's probably coming in as motivated as ever. He's only 28 years old, so the book is not out on him. He's a powerful guy too. He'll probably have some success with wrestling early in this fight, but if you can't keep Kennedy down, Kennedy's going to keep working his way back up to his feet. He's going to continue to come forward. He's going to be looking to land those big shots on you. And I'm taking Kennedy Nzechukwu in the spot, coming off that knockout victory against Carl Robertson. Before that, had a tough, close fight with Nikolai Negamariano. But remember now, I think he had a point deducted in that fight. So essentially, he probably should have took that fight. Got knocked out to Da and Jung before that. Jung is talented, and Jung landed some big shots, and it was what it was. And maybe Cutelaba tries to go that route, tries to wobble him up on the feet and barrage him with strikes, but Kennedy can take a shot. And then before that, putting in work, finishing Danilo Marquez, finishing Carlos Ulberg, only 30 years old, got in the game a little bit later. I think that he's going to continue to grow in front of our eyes. Cutelaba, on the other hand, has been involved in martial arts from an earlier age. I think we kind of know what he's about, even though he's still young. Give me Nzechukwu here. Let's check the betting line too. And Nzechukwu is a -175 favorite. Cutelaba is at +145. Give me Kennedy and Nzechukwu at -175. I think he gets the job done here. I'm really leaning towards that way. Cutelaba needs to show me something. I still think there's potential. Excuse me. I still think there's potential for Cutelaba to kind of amp it up, and maybe we see some glimpses of what he showcase potential of early in his career, but I got to see it. I'm not going to be backing that until I see it. Kennedy, I know what I'm getting. I'm getting a hard-nosed, good striker, heavy-handed guy, and has the heart of a lion, like I said. Give me Kennedy and Nzechukwu. Hey, you guys, real quick. I know you probably can't see me too good. I'm actually in the middle of a cave right now, doing some deep cave diving, but if you're looking to sign up to Bovada, reach out to me for that referral link, and you're getting a free card for free. It's the best sportsbook out there. All right, guys, I'm going to go back in this cave over here. Derrick, the Black Beast Lewis, taking on Sergey Spivak, the Polar Bear versus the Black Beast. You got to love this matchup here. Derrick Lewis, I'm not even going to go on too much about him. You guys all know what Derrick Lewis is about. He's the knockout king. You see it tatted on his chest, knockout king, and he really lives that type of life. He goes into the octagon, starches dudes left and right. Sergey Spivak, a fighter that's really been under the radar for a while, but starting to make a name for himself. Similarly to the other Sergey Pavlovich. I feel like both the Sergeys are very talented. I felt like that for a while now. And Sergey Pavlovich just had a very impressive performance against Derrick Lewis, what he was able to do to him on the feet and all that. Derrick Lewis, remember this too, although Derrick Lewis is a fighter that is one of the greatest knockout artists of all time, he's also a fighter that's been put out a little bit here and there. When he starts to face adversity and gets hit with some big shots, we've seen him weather at times. Now we've also seen him dig really deep like he did against Volkov, so I don't want to paint a wrong picture about him, but you guys know what I'm talking about. We've seen him hit with some big shots and put out. We've seen him flatline. We've seen all that. Sergey Spivak coming off a ground and pound victory over Augusto Sakai, a ground and pound victory over Greg Hardy. So again, the difference between Sergey Spivak and Sergey Pavlovich is more of a stand-up striker type of fighter. Sergey Spivak definitely favors getting the fight down to the mat, getting on top of his opponents and mauling them like a polar bear. His lone loss was against Tom Aspinall, one of the more talented fighters in the division. so unfortunate what happened to him in his last fight. So just understand, when he heals up, Tom Aspinall might be the best heavyweight fighter on planet Earth. So let that play out there. The Alexei Oleinik fight, Spivak was all over him, out grappling him. We know Oleinik has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. Couldn't pull none of them out against Spivak. The KO victory over Jared Vanderaa. Sergey, he's a good fighter. He's only 27 years old. A lot of room for growth. Derrick Lewis, a decade older. He's getting up there in age. We know that the heavyweight division is a division where guys can hang around a little bit longer, but you start getting laid out left and right. You start getting hit with big shots. I mean, you might not be around as long as you think. At least fighting against the best guys in the division. So, I really hope that's not the case, because Derrick Lewis is one of the most fun fighters to watch. But Spivak, maybe Spivak gets on top of him and lands some big shots and tests that chin once again. On the feet, there's that type of possibility too. But again, I don't think that Spivak is as refined as Pavlovich, and Derrick Lewis has serious knockout power. There's without a doubt a very realistic possibility that Derrick Lewis starches Spivak on the feet. He can starch anybody on the feet. You guys know the deal with that. So, but that being said, I think that Spivak will play this fight. He'll play this fight safely. He'll try to work the wrestling and try to maybe point from the outside on the feet, but try to clinch up and really try to drag Lewis to deep waters. We've seen Lewis breathing heavy later in the fights, although he digs deep and still will throw a barrage of strikes at you and try to put you out. I think that Spivak will shell up and avoid that. And overall, I think that Spivak just has more avenues to take this fight. Where Derrick Lewis, I think he needs that big knockout victory to get the job done here. And I'm going to bank that he doesn't get that land that big shot. I'll say that it's a little bit less likely to happen. So can't pick him there. Spivak is a 2-1 favorite, minus 200 favorite. I'll go with the minus 200 line, the 2-1 favorite on Spivak. I think it's more his time right now. And Lewis is coming off a very disappointing loss. He's up there in age, and it's going to be hard for me to back him right now. But you guys know the deal with this knockout power. We'll see. But give me Sergey Spivak to get the job done in the main event. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up UFC Vegas 65, Lewis versus Spivak. Man, I had a long weekend. This Monday's been it's been a tough Monday for me, so I'm sure a lot of you guys are going through a tough Monday yourself. With the holidays on the horizon, just can't wait for all those days to come. But in the meantime, you guys know we got to dig deep and push through. So that's what we're doing here, man. Hopefully all you guys are pushing through with your guys' weeks as well. I'm not going to hit you guys up with any type of major closing thoughts. I'm going to kind of go to my base and just say, hopefully you guys are eating healthy, especially after like a long weekend, like I just said, eating crappy, drinking and all that. The best thing you could do on a Monday like this is kind of cleanse your body, go work up a sweat, go for a little jog around the block, have a light dinner, and try to get the week cruising on a little bit more smoothly, feeling good about yourself. So go work up a little bit of a sweat. If you guys have the ability to get into a sauna, do get inside a sauna. That's always something that's really good to do to kind of cleanse your body from the weekend. If you have a local gym, an LA Fitness, whatever you guys got, get in the sauna. If you have your own sauna in your house, props to you. That's awesome. That's the goal one day. I want to have a sauna in my house one day. But get that sweat going, and you will feel better. Get all those toxins out of your body. Sweat that shit out, and you'll feel better. All right, guys. So that's the note I'm going to leave you guys with. I got some big and better ones to come, but that's a good one to start out with, or a good one to leave you with here for today's episode. It's important. All right, guys. All right. I hope you guys all have a great week. Keep up with me on IG and all that, and Twitter, and like this video, subscribe if you guys haven't, and have your guys a safe and blessed week. Signing out, Teller.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.